16th February, 1884. A disappointing night has passed with neither hide nor hair of the monster. The light of dawn is beginning to seep through the gap in my curtains, and I am exhausted. I must sleep, yet I feel I must leave the house before I do so. Later. Dear God, I have never awoken more afraid. I dropped into sleep before I could leave my house, and awakening in my room was a horrifying experience. I could feel the presence of the red door all around me, and as I hurried through the house, I feared it blocking my path. I was lucky, however, and the door did not present itself during my flight from the house. I went immediately to Anna's shop, praying she had made it back alive. I found her in good health, but poor spirits, her disappointment at the failure of the night's endeavor echoing my own. She was also concerned that I had not returned the night before, and, although she attempted to hide the degree of her worry, I could tell she had feared my demise. Why she did not come looking for me when I did not exit the house at dawn, I cannot say. Perhaps it was fear of the red door that kept her out, or perhaps exhaustion of her own had taken her. Either way, I didn't hold it against her, nor did I bring it up. Rather, I invited her to have lunch with me out on the town, to which she acquiesced. We passed the day in an odd, in-between state, unwilling to speak of the horrors which haunted us, but unable to think of practically anything else. As one can imagine, this made conversation difficult at best. We managed short, truncated volleys of words that began and ended abruptly. This was bothersome to me for reasons I still cannot quite grasp. It was not that I was annoyed by the limping pace of the conversation, but rather that I was frustrated with myself for being unable to help it along. At last I made the decision that the thoughts which occupied our minds could no longer be ignored, and there was nothing else left to talk about. Why didn't it come? I mused, staring into the dregs of my tea. I do not know, Anna replied, obviously aware of my train of thought. Perhaps we are wrong, thinking it is we the monster wants. Perhaps already he is dead. I doubt we're so lucky, I said, but it's a nice thought. Perhaps we ought to consult again with Detective Murphy. I first would go to Ezekiel, Anna suggested. He is not so likely to say we are crazy. Also not so likely to say the I told you so's. I shook my head, sighing heavily. I really thought we were onto something. I really thought we might be able to strike back against the door. This is not yet over, Leslie, Anna reminded me gently. Still we may kill this monster. Still we may strike back against Red Door. Yes, of course, I rallied. There's time yet. It's still early in the game, what? To my surprise, Anna hid a smile behind her hand. What? I demanded. What could you possibly find funny about this? You become so English just now, she told me, grinning. Never I have heard you say any words more English. Still early in the game, what? She mimicked. Next you will tell me to keep stiff my lip and up with my chin. I could not resist smiling at her mangling of our quintessential English phrases of courage. Yes, I said. Stiff upper lip and chin up, my dear. I will say also same to you, Leslie. Do not lose your courage. I shan't, Anna, I said. Not while you're around to goad me back into it. So, she declared, you must only pray that the red door does not take me first. What a terrible thought. And oh, how I wish she had not thought it, nor I heard it from her lips, for now there is little else I can think about. 23rd February, 1884. The past week has gone by in a tortuous haze of repetition. Each day Anna and I plotted to capture the monster. Each night we were foiled by its absence. Never again did I allow myself to enter my house, for fear I might again fall asleep within these walls. I realized upon rereading my journals that I neglected to mention why I entered the manse in the first place. We discovered that Anna's shotgun was broken beyond repair, and so I was forced to go in search of my Colt. I did find it, but it took a good deal more searching than I had thought to root out the extra ammunition. The gun was also in a considerable state of neglect, as it had not been cleaned in several years. Hence, I stayed in the well-lit house to take care of these tasks, while Anna waited outside for the creature. Though I dreaded leaving her out there alone, her bravery, and my keeping the window open, allowed me to do so. At any rate, there has been no sign of the monster until today. The front page news again relates a tale of terrible murder in London. This time it was a young woman, found in too horrible a condition to describe, crammed into a sewer drain in Soho. Her body, too, was unidentifiable due to the severity and multitude of her wounds. Anna and I have decided to call upon Detective Murphy in hopes of obtaining more information on the crime. I jot down this brief entry upon Anna's writing desk while she dresses in the next room, at my insistence. She is returning. I will write again about the results of our meeting with Murphy. 24th February, 1884. I was unable to write of the things I saw and heard yesterday. Though I picked up my pen and sat for long hours before this notebook, I could not force myself to write out the words to describe what I have seen. Now, with a night's sleep between me and the events, I am attempting once more to record our meeting with Murphy and the things that happened after. Anna sits beside me with her hand on my shoulder. I draw strength from her nearness and her touch. We called upon Murphy at his office in Scotland Yard. He was irritable, but did not object to allowing us in, although the station was swarming with officers and terrified citizens. We sat across his desk from him. He looked as though he hadn't slept in days. "What do you want?" he asked. "It's the creature again, isn't it?" I said. "It's killed someone else." "If all you're going to talk about is your damned creature, you may as well get out now." "Please, Mr. Murphy," Anna entreated. "We only wish to help. Perhaps Leslie can tell more of what he knows of dead Jory. Perhaps you can tell more of how crime was committed. We wish to help, Mr. Murphy." She reached across his desk and took one of his hands in both of hers. I burned with rage at the simple gesture, though I was incredibly puzzled at the feeling. "This cannot allow to continue, Samuel. Creature or man, murders must stop." He looked at her long and hard. I had to consciously stop my fists from clenching, as my fingernails were biting into my palms. "First off," Murphy growled, "don't call me Samuel. Second, you're civilians, not policemen, and you're not qualified to do anything. Third, it's a breach of protocol for me to tell you a damn thing about this case." He sighed. "Fourth, I need all the bloody help I can get. Tell me what you know. I'll tell you what I know and what I've guessed." Anna smiled. My jaw clenched. "Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I am sure we can together accomplish this task." "That's all very well," I butted in, "but time is of the essence, as our dear friend Murphy is so fond of reminding us, so let's cut to the chase, shall we?" Anna regarded me curiously, then let go of Murphy's hand. "So, as you say, Leslie, the brass tacks, yes?" Murphy grunted. "Fine then. The body was in a similar condition to the one found in St. James. Mold. Cause of death was drowning, near as the coroner can figure. Body's under constant guard." He shot me a glance. "Just in case." "Seaweed under the fingernails?" I guessed. "Yes," Murphy said. "And in the teeth, what was left of them. Whoever she was, she fought tooth and nail to stay alive. And it did her no good." A chill ran down my spine. I resisted the urge to take Anna's hand. Such a childish gesture was far from apropos. "I can't say much about the creature that I haven't already told you," I said. "Anna and I have been out waiting for it every night for a week. There's been no sign of it yet." "Surprising," Murphy commented with grim satisfaction. He took a cigar from the humidor on his desk and began gnawing on it. I flinched at the waste of a good cigar, but declined to comment on his abuse of the fine item. Anna would have had my head for it, I'm certain. "Perhaps, Mr. Murphy, we could see body of this poor woman," Anna suggested. "Absolutely not," Murphy said, at the same moment as I cried, "But why would you ever want to?" She looked at us both for a moment, as though waiting to see if we had finished our objections. "There is much we may learn from observing this woman. Her wounds, her condition, will help us to know how we may kill monster. We will be ready." "The answer is still absolutely not," Murphy said. "Apart from the breach of protocol, there's very little utility to be gained from examining the body. Trust me, I've seen it." "Did you not say, Mr. Murphy, that you are in need of all help you can get?" Anna inquired. "This, I think, will help." "I really don't think it will," I said. "I don't see how it could." "Trust me, Leslie," Anna implored. "I know what it is I do." I sighed. "Oh, very well. It can't hurt." "What exactly are you trying to gain from this?" Murphy asked. "Understanding, Mr. Murphy," Anna said. "I want to understand." Murphy stared at his desk for a long moment, gnawing on his cigar. At last he took the cigar from his mouth, grimacing. He stood and grabbed his hat and coat. "Come on, then," he said, his voice gruff. Taken by surprise, I scrambled to my feet, while beside me Anna rose with satisfaction, her composure unshaken. We followed Murphy from the police station, out into the streets where the mood was even gloomier and more fearful than after the first murder. It was a short journey to the coroner's, but Murphy's pace was such that I was rather winded by the time we arrived. "It's downstairs," Murphy said, shedding his coat on the move. I wondered if he was always imbued with such impatient energy, or if he simply didn't want to be there with us. Either way, we followed him down into the basement, past 2 police officers who let us pass after a brief exchange with Murphy. He strode to a medical table at the far side of the room and stood beside it, staring back at us as we approached. "Understand whatever you can," he said, with a truncated gesture towards the thing on the table. "I can't make a damn thing of it." This is the part I have dreaded writing, but I feel I must set it down, for my own peace of mind and for posterity. It was difficult at first to tell that the thing upon the table had at one time been human. After some inspection, it was possible to discern a vaguely human shape, but the wounds were so extensive and severe that the limbs and head were obscured. Eventually I managed to pick out small details. Exposed, broken teeth, shattered fingers, leg bones showing through the torn flesh. I could not look long before I had to turn away, but Anna examined the body closely. Her jaw clenched and her eyes narrowed. I watched her throat work as she swallowed down her revulsion, although I had to stop this as well, for the feelings that arose in me were far from appropriate for the situation. I joined Murphy on the far side of the room, where he had lit himself a cigarette. "Mind if I borrow one of those from you?" I asked him. Wordlessly, he handed me a cigarette and offered me a match. The burning taste of paper and tobacco filled my mouth and lungs, cleansing some of my revulsion at the body on the table. I sighed out the smoke and watched it rise toward the ceiling. "That's one hell of a woman you've got there," Murphy commented. I glanced over at Anna, who was inspecting the mangled corpse with iron-stomached scrutiny. "Yes," I answered. "Yes, she is." Man could lose his mind over a woman like that. I turned my head sharply. Murphy was staring at Anna, his cigarette dangling from his lips. No, not just staring. He was memorizing her. "Are you married, Detective?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. He looked over at me, his reverie broken. "What? No. No, never managed to hold still long enough for a woman to catch me. Married to the job is what they call it." "I see," I said. He raised an eyebrow at me, then grinned and took a pull off his cigarette. "Have no fear, Mr. Fletcher. That bright little fireball is too much for an old man like me to handle. She's all yours." I beg your pardon. Our association is only for the purpose of uncovering the mystery of this red door and preventing this monster from murdering more citizens." Murphy chuckled. "You keep telling yourself that, see how it works out for you." I was saved from further derision by a call from Anna. "Leslie! Mr. Murphy! Come, I have found something!" I crushed out my cigarette and crossed over to Anna, avoiding, as much as I could, looking at the corpse on the table. "What is it?" Murphy asked, close on my heels. "Here," she said, and pointed. So far as I could tell, it was simply the edge of one of the wounds. "What is it?" I said. Murphy was peering closely, though, and sucked in a breath through his teeth. "Is that what I think it is?" Anna nodded. "A fingernail," she said. "Attacker, he tears her apart with only his hands." I felt my knees going weak, blackness closing over my vision. Thoughts swirled through my head, most of which I cannot now recall. Visions of the terrible, gory creature ripping into me, leaving me as broken and mutilated a husk as this poor woman, swam before my eyes. I felt myself collapsing under the weight of such horror. Next I knew, I was waking up on the floor, Anna leaning over me and helping me to sit up. She was crooning at me in Russian, the rough, fluid syllables grating on my ears. "God, Anna," I groaned. "The least you can do for me is speak so I can understand you." "Oh, I am sorry, Leslie," she said, sitting back. "When I am made nervous or afraid, I do not remember to speak English. You are all right?" "I don't know," I answered. "I don't feel quite right." "Mr. Murphy has gone for doctor," she told me. "I stay here with you so that you do not wake up all alone with dead woman." "Yes, instead I wake up all alone with live woman," I said, still rather woozy. "Leslie, you are not well. Your head, he is all full with air." "My head, he is all full with you," I answered, and quite before I knew what was going on, I was kissing her. She pulled away quickly, her eyes wide. "Leslie, niet," she said. "You are not well, and here there are dead. Show respect." I'm sorry," I stammered. "I don't know what came over me." I knew precisely what had come over me. It had been overcoming me for the past month, and I had been too preoccupied and too stupid to notice it. I love her, I realized in that moment. It was fortunate that my senses were returning to me, else I might have told her then and there. It was also fortunate that Murphy returned then with a doctor. I was escorted out of the mortuary into the upstairs room, where I was given a clean bill of health and an admonition not to stress myself too much. I went home with Anna. Murphy went with us to her flat. The red door was in its place behind the shop, and I nearly passed out again. Anna supported me as I went past, for my head was spinning and my knees were weak. When we arrived upstairs, I looked around and realized Murphy was not with us. "Don't let him touch it!" I cried, but Anna had already fled from the room. I spent a few long moments in tortuous anticipation, wondering if Anna would return with or without the detective. At last, she returned to the room, Murphy trailing behind her. "Oh, thank God," I said. "You remember, I'm sure, what happened to the last fellow who touched the door." "Leslie," Anna told me gently. "His hand was on the knob." I stared long and hard at Detective Murphy. He stared back unflinchingly. "Are you stupid?" I asked. Murphy cracked a smile and walked into the room, seating himself in the desk chair. I suppose I am. Wanted to see for myself the supposed power of this red door. His smile vanished. I must say it gave me chills. You're lucky you're not dead, I told him. Didn't you tell me yourself that you've touched the door before? He asked. This gave me pause. I had, in fact, touched the door before on multiple occasions. Why, then, had I not met the same gruesome fate as Mr. Brewer? Why hadn't Murphy? Nothing more productive was gained from the conversation from that point onwards, and after about an hour or so, Murphy, having figured this out, took his leave of us. That left me alone with Anna, and suddenly I was very nervous. Anna, I began, about earlier. Yes, she said. I too wish to speak about this. We sat in silence for some long moments before I finally worked up the courage to speak. I watched her where she sat at her desk. She was beautiful, but cold, much like the country whence she hailed. I felt myself in dire need of making her smile. First, let me apologize, I said, choking out the sentence like a peach stone stuck in my throat. I am terribly sorry. I wasn't in my right mind. So when you are in right mind, Anna said, you do not do these things? No, I said. It's highly improper. And this is only reason? Because is improper? I knew I was blushing furiously, but I stammered on, determined to get my point across despite Anna's penchant for embarrassing me. Yes, I said. It's improper to kiss others in public, even more so in a mortuary, my God! Her eyes narrowed, and she stared at me closely. What you are saying, Leslie? I'm saying... I swallowed down my fear, wishing for the freeing burn of vodka down my throat. I'm saying that I would very much like to kiss you again. There was a moment where she stared at me, and my heart thrummed in my ears. And then Anna laughed. How quiet, how sweet a little admission, she cried. And oh, how so English! Her effervescent demeanor vanished, and she stared at me quite seriously. I very much would like to kiss you again also, Leslie, she said. Well, I said, rather out of breath. That's a happy situation, isn't it? I felt drunk, giddy. I wondered if this was the sort of stress the doctor had admonished me to avoid. It was not impossible that I was going to lose consciousness again. I was frozen in place, stammering. Much as I wanted to kiss her, to take her hand in mine, I found that I could not bring myself to do it. I buried my face in my hands, trying to breathe deeply, laughing with nerves. I tried to wrestle myself back under control, lest my laughter turn manic, or, worse yet, let loose the building scream that had been growing inside me. It was the touch of Anna's hand on my shoulder, gentle, like a feather fall, that brought me staggering back to reality. Oh, My poor little Leslie, she said, looking down at me with gleaming blue eyes. For you this is all so much. I leaned my head against her hand. I could feel my pulse thrumming through my every vein. The warmth of her hand was like sunlight on my cheek. Too much, I murmured. It's all been far too much. I fear I might lose my mind if this continues on. I'm living in fear of my life, of your life. Murphy's, Mad Zeke's, all of London's lives are at stake. I feel it's my responsibility to keep them all safe. She smelled of lilac and fox fur, of the smog of London, of skin. No, Leslie, not so, she said. It is to you to keep yourself alive, and to me, myself, and so to each man and woman it is their own responsibility. I know, I moaned, but how can anyone defend himself against such things as we've seen? How could anyone, not knowing what waits out there, possibly be prepared for it? Mr. Brewer wasn't prepared. He didn't know. And look what happened to him. It could have happened to Murphy as well. But you do not take blame from these things, Anna replied. Red Door, he will kill Mr. Brewer whether we are there or not. And Mr. Murphy, he approaches door of his own will. He knows what it may do, and he touches anyway. So, blame is not with you. Eyes closed. I felt my breath moistening her hand as I spoke. I know. I just want, so desperately, that no one else should die. And I know I have the power to stop it. She took my face in her hands, and I looked at her as though for the very first time. The hard determination of her mouth, the soft smile of her eyes, the cold pallor, the warm flush of her cheeks. Yes, she said simply. I do not know how long we stayed like that. I would have counted heartbeats, but my heart had stopped. Counted breaths, but my breath hovered motionless in my throat. Counted seconds, but the clocks below had all gone silent. Slowly, in an underwater dream, I raised my hand to her face and touched her cheek, incredibly lightly, with the tip of my finger. I traced her jaw, wondering the heat of her skin, touched her lips, wondering the taste of her mouth, placed one finger under her chin and drew her closer, wondering if this next moment would be the one when she pulled away. We kissed. There are no words in this or any other language to tell of that moment. I cannot even remember it now. I see it as though through a drugged or sleepless haze. It was a moment too brilliant, too visceral, too human to set down on something dull as paper, with things as sordid as words. We kissed. That is all that need be said of the matter.